How the United States failed to overthrow the Iranian regime by force. Have you ever wondered why, despite all the pressure, sanctions, blockades, and threats, the United States has failed to overthrow the Iranian regime? Why have all attempts at regime change failed, whether through military confrontation, economic strangulation, internal unrest, or psychological and information warfare? Was the real objective truly the freedom of the Iranian people, or was it something entirely different, weakening state, stripping it of its power, and turning it into a country incapable of defending itself? In this video, I will explain in detail how the United States attempted to overthrow the Iranian regime by force, how sanctions, protests, the internet, and even satellite technology were used, and why all these attempts ultimately failed. This is not an emotional speech, it's a political reading of what happened, away from slogans and propaganda. For a long time, the United States has been trying to overthrow the regime in Iran, using multiple tools: military pressure, proxy wars, economic sanctions, psychological warfare, and internal destabilization. Yet all these attempts have failed. One of the earliest and most dangerous attempts dates back to 1980, when the Americans persuaded or lured Saddam Hussein into invading Iran. Saddam was promised that the Iranian regime would collapse quickly, and that conspiration inside Iran would overthrow the system from within. The plan failed completely. Instead of collapsing, Iran became more unified, and the war turned into one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts in the region, ending without achieving its main objectives: regime change. After failing militarily, both directly and indirectly through Saddam, the United States changed its strategy and shifted to what can be described as economic warfare. This policy reached its peak with maximum sanctions, during which Iranian assets were frozen, companies dealing with Iran were punished, and Iran was effectively isolated from the global financial system. As a result of these sanctions, the Iranian currency collapsed dramatically, inflation surged, and ordinary people suffered, especially merchants, bazaar traders, found themselves unable to sell their goods or import products from abroad. Their livelihood were collapsing, not primarily because of internal factors, but due to the economic stagnation imposed from outside. In response, the bazaar merchants began peaceful demonstrations. These protests were purely economic in nature. They were not armed, not ideological, and not aimed at overthrowing the state. They were legitimate expression of anger over inflation, currency collapse, and the impossibility of continuing normal economic life. However, these peaceful demonstrations were not allowed to remain peaceful. According to the analysis, the United States and the Mossad encouraged and activated their supporters inside Iran, including separatist groups and opposition organizations. These elements deliberately infiltrated the protests and turned them violent. Gunfire began to appear in the streets. Armed elements started shooting at police officers and in some cases even at demonstrators themselves. The objective was clear: to create chaos, cause bloodshed, and then accuse the Iranian government of killing peaceful protesters. It's claimed that at least 100 police officers were killed by gunfire during these events. There's video evidence clearly showing that these demonstrations were no longer peaceful, but involved the direct use of weapons against police forces and civilians alike, in order to fabricate narrative of state repression.
You've seen protests before. You've seen riots, clashes, statements, press conferences. But what Iran just did is something very few countries have the nerve to do at this level. Iran officially summoned ambassadors, not from small or irrelevant states, but from top European powers: the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and other major European countries. They were asked to sit down. A screen was turned on, and then the footage started playing. What footage? Armed protesters firing weapons, shooting at police, attacking security forces, burning public buildings, setting mosques on fire, carrying out coordinated acts that clearly looked like organized violence, not peaceful protest. Iran's message was simple and brutal. You sit in Europe and lecture us about human rights. You accuse us of shooting protesters. Now look at this. Tell us honestly, if this happened in London, Paris, Berlin, or Rome, what would you do? Would your police stand there and watch? Then Iran went a step further. They played footage from the United States, a recent ICE-related incident where a woman was shot by security forces. The video shows her driving a car before gunfire erupts. The U.S. narrative says she was about to run people over. Iran paused the video and asked the room a question no one answered out loud. When this happens in America, why are you silent? When it happens in Iran, why do you threaten strikes, sanctions, and military action?
At this stage, the American plan relied heavily on information warfare. The strategy was to spread rumors through the internet, claiming that the regime had collapsed, that the army defected, and that the state had lost control. This manufactured chaos would then justify foreign military intervention. The plan was for American jets to strike selected targets, assassinate key military and political leaders, and open the way for armed groups inside Iran to take over, exactly as happened in Syria. But once again, the plan failed. The Iranian authorities made a decisive move and shut down the internet completely. This disrupted coordination between foreign intelligence service and their agents inside the country, causing the psychological warfare campaign to collapse rapidly. Donald Trump then attempted to bypass this by activating satellite communications. However, this attempt also failed as Iran managed to neutralize this option, leading to a complete collapse of the plan. At this point, it became clear that the attempt to overthrow the Iranian regime had failed entirely. Trump then tried to save face by claiming that Iran had promised him not to carry out hundreds of executions that were allegedly planned. There is no credible evidence that such executions were ever planned. This narrative appears to have been fabricated to justify the retreat and disguise the failure. At the same time, serious concerns emerged in the region. There were fears of large-scale Iranian missile response and concern that American military bases in the region would become direct targets. This made any military adventure extremely costly and dangerous for everyone involved. In conclusion, in the end, the truth is clear. Regime change cannot be imported from abroad. The United States is not genuinely interested in the freedom of the Iranian people. Its real objective is to weaken Iran, strip it of its means of power, and prevent it from possessing independent defensive capability so that it does not pose a threat to American interests or their allies in the Middle East. If change is ever to occur in Iran or in any other country, it must come from within the people themselves through peaceful means, dialogue, elections, and internal political processes. Any attempt to impose changes from outside, whether by Americans or their ally in the Middle East, does not bring freedom, democracy. It brings chaos, destruction, and long-term instability. If you find this analysis important, please support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it. This simple support helps keep independent discussions alive and prevent the truth from being buried under propaganda. This is presented by Dr. Farid Munim.